Hello and welcome to another episode of Careers and Coffee. Today is Tuesday the 8th of June and I'm delighted to welcome today Dani Payton. Dani is a teacher of design and technology at a South Norfolk high school and also the Aspirations coordinator, and we'll find more about what that means in a bit. In the meantime, welcome Dani.
Hello.
Hello, nice of you to join us. Thank you for coming along.
Thank you for having me.
Brilliant, that's great. So, firstly, may I ask, you've obviously had quite an interesting and varied career, starting off life in the fashion industry. So, can I ask you what took you to fashion? Was it something that was an ambition of yours at school? How did that come about? And it's an extremely difficult industry to get into, and looking at your career, you've worked for some really big brands and done some pretty amazing things. So how did you get there, and how did you manage to be so successful?
I think it's always been something that I've been sort of really interested in. When I was at school, I was always very creative, either like writing stories or, always interested in art. And then kind of as that's progressed and as I then went into the working world, it's just kind of been a case of, any opportunities that come my way, be it when I was younger, entering competitions and stuff. I was always the person that was doing artistic competitions to try and kind of get my foot in the door in certain companies, or just kind of make myself known.
Did you, because you have some amazing achievements. I mean, you won a prize through, was it Norfolk County Council, through achieving over 98% in 3 of your sixth form exams. It's like, oh my goodness, that's incredible.
I think I had no social life.
Where did the drive come from? Because one of the things that we often, to find that within you, what were your inspirations?
I think it's because, to start off with, I'd say it's probably just passion. Like, I loved what I was doing. There was never a day, where, especially within my A levels, when I woke up and thought, oh my goodness, like I have to go to sixth form. I was always very like academic and studious, and always spending hours in the art room when I was at sixth form. So I think that drive probably comes from there. And also just, I've always been, and I say to my students now, like, just stay curious. And I think I sort of instilled that within myself from a very young age. I always just wanted to know more about things. And I think that kind of creates like a momentum of creating a good work ethic, because you're always curious to find out more. You always want to work.
Absolutely. And did you have any, when you were at school, did you have anybody who kind of was like a mentor, or somebody who inspired you, even somebody, famous, or your granny or somebody? Was there anybody in your life that you kind of thought that really helped give you that kind of momentum, or was it just totally self-driven?
I would say so, especially within like the artistic side and the creative side. There was a big art movement in London in the 80s, and that kind of then, it's called the Club Kids. And that then kind of continued into the 90s and into sort of when I was at sixth form. And that drive to always want to know more about them, but also a lot of the time what I would do when I was younger is I would catch the train to London and go and just explore all of where like the club kids used to go partying, or where they go shopping. And I think, again, like that curiosity then like inspired me even more. And then alongside that, I would look at designers like Alexander McQueen or Vivienne Westwood, who were kind of creating things which I suppose pushed the creative boundaries and pushed design boundaries. And they're just really kind of what stood as an anchor for me for my own design work.
Yes, I remember Vivienne Westwood's designs and just thinking how amazing. And like you say, really pushing the boundaries, but she managed to do it in a really constructive and an appealing way. She had an engaging way about her. And I think I remember feeling that she was very inspiring myself.
I think she
was giving permission, wasn't she, to say push those boundaries, use
And
your
she makes it
creativity.
commercial, and I think that's
Yes.
yeah.
That was excellent. So working in the fashion industry, notorious place for being, a very tough kind of world.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of highs and lows, I would imagine. I mean, obviously you've worked for some big designers. What would you say were the kind of greatest highs and possibly lows, and how did you deal with the stress that would bring?
Goodness. So the greatest highs would be probably, so the first one would be when I first experienced London Fashion Week. I interned for a company called Jonathan Saunders. He now works underneath DVF in New York. But experiencing that was for me like a phenomenal like pinch me moment. So we had been, as an intern, it's like everyone knows you have to work ridiculously long hours, and you kind of have to just do whatever work is thrown your way. And we started the collection, so it's spring summer, I can't remember the year, but I started the internship back in February. No, sorry, that's a lie. I started the internship, I can't remember when. And then obviously we sort of created the collection from scratch. And this was like a whole massive learning process, because we were dealing with fabrics that cost like £400 a meter. And so like the precision and accuracy that you're learning the whole time was just incredible. And then working right down to the final minute of you're helping like dress models, and making sure that they look as Jonathan wanted them to look. We then ran around the back to actually kind of see the models walking on the catwalk, and that was just like a phenomenal moment where it was like, wow, we've worked so hard for this, and it just made everything feel worthwhile. And in terms of dealing with the lows, goodness, there's so many. Fashion is such a strange industry to work in, because you go from working a million miles an hour when you're getting ready for a catwalk, and then you've kind of got that moment afterwards where it's like, well, what do we do now? And it's not necessarily like a massive low, but you're then trying to create a momentum and get more inspiration for the next collection. So it's all kind of just a massive continuous cycle, but it's just about adapting to, I suppose, to working like a million miles an hour and then working to slightly slower pace, which is always nice. So, and
in terms of like the stress, how did you kind of cope with that? Because there are, it can be a very tough industry in terms of, as an intern or a trainee or somebody new into it, there's a lot of talk about, I mean, I don't know whether this is a misconception or a myth about the industry, about, people talking to youngsters in a fairly tough kind of way. And I would imagine you need to develop a really thick skin.
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things is that you have to remember that everyone that is working in the office is in exactly the same situation. So just talk to each other. Like I know, for example, when I worked at Net-a-Porter, and the way that you perhaps speak to models wouldn't necessarily be how you would speak to someone normally, but it's about understanding that actually this is your job and this is the industry that you're in, and it's not something that you can take personally. You just kind of have to separate yourself, I suppose, from your professional side to your personal side.
That's good advice. We've actually got a question even that's been posted by somebody. It says, what careers advice would you give a young person interested in a similar career as yourself?
Goodness. So I'm assuming this would be for the fashion element.
Yeah.
So the biggest career advice I would be is just be completely open to anything that comes your way. I know that when I was graduating, there were people who they were turned down opportunities because they didn't like the company or something. And I think that's not necessarily the right work ethic to take. I think you should accept anything that comes your way, because you never know what doors it's going to open. I've always had in my mind of like, don't have tunnel vision for your kind of like ultimate career goal, because I don't think that exists. I think as you progress through life, your like ultimate goal will change. And that's why I think it's just really good to kind of take off all these different branches and try and understand that, the progression of your career will change as you as a person develop, and you'll become more informed about your industry.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's very useful life advice. So why, because now you're a design and technology teacher, so what made you have a career change? And it's obviously quite a very drastic change, completely different. And what made you do that, and why design and technology?
I get this a lot. So I think it's something that I always really wanted to do. Even when I entered the fashion industry, it was always in the background of my mind. And I'm in my late 20s. I'm 29, so I think I've kind of gone into it a lot earlier than what I thought I would. I think when I was in the fashion industry, I thought I would probably become a teacher, later on in life, not necessarily at 29. But then I had a friend of mine when I lived in London. He passed away, and it kind of just made me reevaluate what was important to me in life. And I suppose one of them things was actually, why put off doing things that I really want to do? I might as well do it now when I'm passionate about it. And, I'm really glad I made that decision.
And what skills do you think that you learnt in the fashion industry that you've been able to bring across to teaching?
Goodness, there's so many. I would say first, it would probably be I've learned how to explain things to people, and I don't think I necessarily would have known that without having gone through the process of working in industry and learning myself, and also teaching others when I was in industry, and also just making sure that all of the things that I'm teaching at the moment are all relevant to industry. So because I'm quite new to the teaching practice, and I've obviously got quite a lot of experience within fashion, I know that the things that I'm teaching are very, very relevant. So I'm setting up my pupils for when they eventually enter the world of work.
Absolutely. So is this because you're also the aspirations coordinator at school? So
yeah.
Perhaps for people listening, you could explain what that role actually is and what it means to you, and how you managed to get it.
Yep. So the aspirations coordinator, essentially my role is I help promote careers and aspirations within the school. So that would involve promoting any opportunities, building the careers program, and liaising with any external guests or any external providers to help support kind of any labour market information. And also it's about addressing how the curriculum within different subjects links to careers. I would say how I fell into the role, it essentially became available within the school, and I just thought it's one of them things, like I said earlier, just always be open to opportunities. And it's one of them things that as I've kind of developed within the role, I just find myself wanting to research into it in my own spare time. And I think I've just become more and more passionate about it.
Yes, because you're even doing a level 6 qualification on top of everything else.
Yes,
as well, the careers leader qualification. Which is incredible. In fact, you've got, I should have mentioned earlier that you've won some amazing scholarships as well and worked in fashion in China.
Yes, yeah. So I worked for a company called Liu Zheng in, I've got to remember that, in northeast China. That was for just over a year. That was a good experience.
And was that part of your training, or was that just a short-term contract? And
no,
so to work in China is quite unusual and difficult to get to.
Yeah, so it was essentially became available for an agency, and I was at a time in my life where I'd graduated. I was doing some freelance work, and I really wanted to travel. And I just thought, you know what, I haven't got any responsibility in England, no mortgage, no children or anything that I had to worry about. So I just thought I might as well just go for it. And yeah, I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, it must have been a fascinating experience. And how do you think working in another culture has actually helped you in your current role?
So in particular, working within China, I think that there's a big kind of within China, there's a big sense of creating relationships with other companies and like really establishing them. So a lot of the time it was about going out with sort of managers from factories and kind of creating a relationship. And I think that's probably something that I, especially working freelance, I really tried to establish within my own work when I then moved back to England. In itself, China, or when I was working abroad, the work ethic of the company that I worked for was exceptional. So I think that's probably something I definitely learned, lots of early hours and late evenings.
Wow, that's excellent, and tremendous life experience as well. Because am I right in thinking that you were part of the Swap to Teaching? I can't remember the name of the campaign now, but there was a campaign. I remember sort of seeing it in the newspaper about encouraging people to go into teaching.
Yes, I believe it was the Get Into Teaching campaign.
That's it. That's the one. That's it.
Yeah. I had to make sure then. I was like, I hope I'm saying the right.
Yeah.
So that was essentially I trained with Suffolk and Norfolk Skip, which is you do 4 days in school and then 1 day at university where you're kind of learning about the theory of teaching. For me, I went for the 4 days in teaching. As I've said, I prior to that, apart from getting the experience, which meant I could get on the course, which was only 2 weeks, I hadn't set foot in a classroom since I'd been in school. So for me, I really wanted to make sure that I was, kind of thrown in at the deep end from day one, and that I could get as much experience as possible standing in front of the children, getting used to kind of different methods of teaching and making sure that I could really enhance my practice. So yeah, I did that, and then I was contacted about doing the campaign, which obviously I'm happy to do. I love teaching, and so any way that I can kind of promote teaching within Norfolk and Suffolk or anywhere actually is excellent.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I have to say, I've really taken my hat off since doing this role and working so much with teachers. I think I don't think people actually really realise how hard you guys work and the long hours that are put in. And, since the pandemic as well, the incredible efforts that have been made to support youngsters. I hope they one day realise this, and on behalf of mine, I say thank you. So what would you say is the best thing about teaching and also with your aspirations role, supporting students to sort of make their future?
So the best thing I find about teaching is that it's so varied. I think especially within my time within fashion, I always found that I kind of got into the momentum of I knew what each day would be, and going into teaching, although you kind of have a rough idea, I love that I can just go into my classroom and the people that stand in front of you, they all have come from kind of different backgrounds, and it's lovely just to stand in front of them, and everything is new to them, and it's that whole curiosity that I love. In terms of the aspirations role, sorry, what was the question? What do I enjoy about that?
Yeah, about helping youngsters prepare for their future.
So for the aspirations role, it would, in particular, I would say it's the whole element of the world is your oyster, just try new things. And I love that I can give them information, and potentially, you never know, it could go on, it could fall on deaf doors, but it's nice to actually giving them one small bit of information could lead to them deciding their career choice, and that's really kind of humbling, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. Just knowing that something you might do just make that little bit of difference to help them think, yes, I'd like to do that. Yeah,
it's just sparking interest. I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I agree completely. And so if you were thinking about students, if you could give your 16-year-old self a piece of advice now, what would you say?
Goodness. So 16-year-old me, I would say keep working as hard as you possibly can. It will pay off. As I think I answered with the question earlier, but just be open to trying new things, follow your passion. Your passions will change ultimately as well, and there's nothing wrong with that, because I think as your passions change, your life choices change, and I think it's just about making sure that you're changing with your kind of decisions that you do or have.
Absolutely, completely agree, because I remember when I first started in the world of work, people who I knew who were retiring had been doing the same job for 40 years. You know, they went into something and they stayed in it for life, and it was pretty much frowned upon if you changed. But of course now, as we all know, careers aren't necessary. You know, I should say a career is for life, but jobs aren't for life. You can change and take your experience with you and forever grow. And I guess the secret is to keep on, like you said, is to keep on learning.
It's strange because I always say to the students as well, like I know as well, like even when I went to sixth form, when you had the opportunity to leave university, I know like with my parents, it's like you just said, like you would just go into a career and that'd be your career for life, and that's fantastic. But now there are so many doors to potentially do, like you could go traveling, you could volunteer at a different company, and that idea of what is available is absolutely amazing. And I think it's just, especially within that aspirations role, it's about making students aware that actually you don't have to go and work 9 to 5 and do that for however long. You could go traveling, you could go and help other people, and just understanding that there are other opportunities available
and grasping those. Of course, I suppose the one thing that's come out of the pandemic is that there are many opportunities virtually as well. So there are lots of experiences students can sign up to and gain and increase their skill set by actually, jumping on and doing a virtual work placement or contacting a company that way.
I was reading earlier, I don't know if I can plug companies, but I got an email through earlier. Burberry they've opened up a massive platform for helping students. So they're offering virtual work experience, but also helping students create their CV and identify potential skills that they might have. So where they can look at their strengths and weaknesses. And I think, like you said, like that, those opportunities just weren't available before the pandemic. So now that you've got a massive company that you could potentially put on your CV, but also they're offering like all of these kind of supportive programs and qualifications, and that's excellent, and definitely one of the few advantages of a global pandemic.
Yes, I was going to say, and that's Burberry's.
Yeah, Burberry, yeah.
Excellent. Okay, well, for anybody watching, hopefully they will. There'll be people who will look into that and all the other virtual opportunities that are available, because it's like you say, trying to make the most of any opportunities that we've got and going for it, and just having that courage. I know that first step into the virtual world can be quite daunting, but once your toes in the water, then you're swimming. So that's a great place to end. And Dani, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Great insight into life in the fashion industry, and good advice about making the most of every opportunity that's out there. And it's okay to change career. And lots of luck with the CL training.
Thank you.
Yes, nice, lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Cheerio. Right. Okay. So that was Dani Payton. A really interesting career. Some really good advice about making the most of opportunities and how one set of experiences within a career could be extremely beneficial for another role. So that's all for today. On Thursday, Brixton Finishing School will be on Careers and Coffee, talking about their general projects and what they offer. And they're an organisation who in 2019 won the Best Digital Skills and Inclusion project. They're very keen on making sure that their offer is available for absolutely everybody, no matter their walk in life, where they come from, etc. So that's Thursday, the 10th of June at 4:30. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you.